Hey, remember that Thanksgiving dinner you had a few weeks ago? How'd that stuffing work out for you? Was it light and delicate and well seasoned, or was it dense and stodgy and tasted like somebody just pulled it out of a really dry turkey? We can fix all of those problems by making dressing instead with stuff you probably already have around the house. The secret is in the eggs. I'll be back to explain in just a second. Hey, Feasting Food Fighters, I'm Mr. Spork, and these are Mr. Spork's hands. I did not dare put up a turkey and stuffing video before Thanksgiving because I didn't want to cause a panic. You don't want to go messing around with Grandma's ancient recipe the day before Thanksgiving, especially if Grandma is coming to dinner that year. But now that that feast is behind us for another year, I think it's a good time to reevaluate, maybe see if we can do a little bit better than the old standby stuffing. That's stuffing cooked inside of a bird or similar that dries out the turkey. It's a bad idea. The turkey doesn't cook evenly. It can be dangerous if things don't cook right. I mean, it's just all kinds of bad when you're doing stuffing inside of a bird. Take that stuffing out and make dressing instead. For dressing, all you're going to do is the same sort of process, but you're going to cook it in a separate side dish. And we're going to get a little bit of souffle action going on with the eggs. And that's what's going to give us the lift, make it a little bit lighter, a little bit fluffier. We'll talk about all that in a second. But first, we got to pick a dish. Any reasonably shallow baking dish will work perfectly well for cooking your stuffing. I've used all kinds of stuff, from something like this Any of these will work perfectly well and allow the eggs to souffle up the sides, especially if we butter the heck out of the dish. When I was a kid, I always knew Thanksgiving was coming because a bag would magically appear in the fridge and start to accumulate all sorts of weird bits of bread, a spare Kaiser roll or an extra hot dog bun. Why do the number of hot dog buns in a package never match the number of hot dogs? I don't understand why they haven't gotten together there. But anyway, we'd collect all sorts of stuff. The ends out of Wonder Bread and a spare baguette, whatever you got laying around. If you don't eat a lot of bread or bake your own bread, you can always go to the grocery store. Everybody's got a day-old rack and get yourself a really cheap, I think it was less than $1 for a day-old, and day-old is fine. You want this bread to be fresh and dry. Notice I didn't say stale. So the people that leave it out on the counter, couple hours is fine, but really what you want to do is get yourself a nice sheet pan and you can cut it. I actually like to tear it to get kind of weird shapes. Tear this up and get it onto that sheet pan and put it into a really low oven. We're talking as low as the oven will go. You're going to get something like this, and I do this. These are really, really hard, but they will do fine for adding structure. I cut those instead of tearing them. Whatever works for you, don't worry about it. It's not that exact and a science. So get this, just a quick note about your bread mix. Some people will actually put crackers in there. I suppose that's fine for a few for some interesting texture, but I wouldn't go nuts there. Don't put in a whole lot. And also, if you happen to eat a lot of bagels like I do, bagels are a little too dense for this particular use. Save them for something else. We want to get a real flavor boost into this dressing by using fresh herbs. Thyme would be a fabulous choice. It's always a winner as we go into the colder months. If you want to run out to the garden and grab yourself some fresh rosemary, that would work perfectly well too. But for me, Southern cornbread dressing has always been about the sage. The running joke in my family is when Grandma would ask me to taste the dressing for seasoning, she meant salt and pepper, but I always answered, it needs more sage. I have been addicted from an early age. You can use the fresh or you can use the dry. To prove it to you, I'm going to use a little of both today. And you always want to get those herbs into some kind of a fat so that the volatile oils will release more easily and more widely throughout the dish. Today I'm going to use butter. If you were making a big batch of compound butter for a bunch of other holiday recipes, you could absolutely do this a couple days ahead. Just chop them up, put them in the butter and mix it together, roll them up in a parchment paper log and throw them in the fridge for a week. But if you're in a hurry or if you're not making a big batch, I'm just going to melt this butter down. That heat will release the volatile oils perfectly well. My dry sage here is just a little bit stemmy, so I'm going to give it a quick spin in the dedicated to spice grinding coffee mill. You guys do have one of those, right? It'll come out a little bit smoother that way, but what you don't want is the old stale bottles at the grocery store that are really dense, as dense as flour. That's not a good sign. You still want it to be a little bit fluffy, just maybe not quite as stemmy as this. So we get something kind of like this for the sage. Now let's do the same for the black peppercorn. You guys don't buy that pre-ground black peppercorn stuff, do you? And here is a full nose full of freshly ground black pepper. And now for the fresh sage leaves, I'm just going to chop them up reasonably fine. And there's the fresh sage minced down nice and fine. Let me get that butter melted real fast. And with that butter still pretty warm from melting, we're going to go ahead and get our fresh herbs in there. I'm going to take a pretty healthy dose of that dry. Remember, it's me, so you may want to go a little lighter on the sage. And a good chunk of pepper. Give it a nice stir. And just let this sit on the counter for at least 5 or 10 minutes. So I'm going to take my cornbread first. You don't need to use a knife. It'll fall apart all on its own. And just break it apart into pretty big chunks because it's going to break down some on its own as you stir this together. This was an 8-inch pan recipe. If you don't know how to make cornbread, go check out the video I threw up a couple weeks ago. It will tell you everything you know in about 3.5 minutes. But plain cornbread, I think in that video I put in jalapenos because I was serving it with chili. Don't put jalapenos in this, well, unless you're just really crazy. So to that volume of cornbread, I want to add an equal, roughly, volume of dry bread. This is the stuff I just dried, if you will, in the oven, and that's about, you know, what am I going to use the rest of this for? Right? Just going to go ahead and throw it all in. Do whatever works for you. I'm just going to mix them up a little bit, and just to add some other texture, I'm going to take some of my really hard, probably these have been dried for a couple weeks now, really hard crumbs. Again, texture is what you're going for here. Of course, we got to get the classic celery and onion combo in there. You guys don't need to see me chop that again. But I will say I much prefer hand chopping here rather than using a food processor unless you're making dressing for 200 or something, because you're in control and you get more interesting and varied shapes and textures and sizes, I think. You want to keep nice big pieces in this. Speaking of the veg, as you can see, I like a nice big pile of both celery and onion. A lot of recipes will sweat these down, pre-cook them a little bit. I really have never found that necessary. Again, it's about texture and all those flavors that you would release into the pan. Maybe you can recapture them, maybe you can't. All those flavors will just go straight into the bread and the cornbread because they're like sponges. Also on your celery, make sure that you wash your celery really well. It's kind of always at the top of the dirtiest vegetable lists, not just because of the way the plant grows with the dirt down here at the roots, but because of the way commercial agriculture grows it with pesticides and all sorts of other craziness. Make sure you wash your celery, or maybe even buy the organic. It might be worth it there. My chicken and beef stock have both been patiently waiting over here on the side of the video the whole time, unlike certain kittens I know. But they are very much worthy of attention because they are such a huge portion of the equation for flavor in your dressing. I have always used a combination of chicken and beef, 50-50. That's just how we did it. But if you have time to make your stock at home, I think it's a wonderful use of a few minutes hands-on time and 45 minutes worth of simmering. Just save your vegetable trimmings, the ends of onions and carrot peels and such. Throw them into a pot with, say, a chicken carcass or beef bones, simmer them, season them, you're good to go. If you don't have those, you can run to the grocery store. The beef bones are always over in the frozen bunker next to the butcher because he never can get rid of all of them. And the chicken wing tips are usually really, really cheap in a package. There's almost no meat on them, so people don't buy them to eat, but they will make great stock. Head over to the produce section, go to the wonky or day old or almost expired section and grab yourself some appropriate vegetables for simmering into stock. It will do perfectly well on the cheap. Should you use the juices from a roasted chicken or turkey to make your dressing? Well, if there was an infinite amount of those drippings, I would say absolutely, it would be delicious. Hopefully what you did was, instead of stuffing that bird full of bread, you left the cavity kind of open, you threw in a quartered lemon and a quartered onion, maybe a stalk of celery and some thyme leaves. That's going to make a really, really rich drippings for your gravy. Gravy is where you want to use that super rich stuff. For making dressing, I think relatively simple stocks, as long as you give them a little bit of love and attention and do some taste tests with the brands you buy, if that's the way you're going, I think you'll do just fine. The last thing to prep before we assemble and bake this dressing off is the all-important eggs. You want to do this last because what we're going to try to do is whip some air into them so that they will do a little bit better job of that souffle action. Let me get these eggs out of the shell, and here we are with nice frothy eggs after a trip through the upright mixer. I've actually tried separating the yolks and the whites and whipping the whites separately, but didn't really seem to help much. So just whip them together until you get a little bit lighter color. I've also split my bread mix into a couple bowls because you want some mixing room. If your herb butter has set up, give it a couple quick pulses in the microwave. Don't let it get too hot though, because what we're going to do, just going to check that, not nice, barely warm. We're going to go into our eggs with that pungent, delicious sage butter. In she goes. Give it a quick mix. And now, get this right. I'm going to get my onions. I'm going to go in about there. And those go there. Something about like that. I've got one big piece in there. Don't worry. Irregular is good. A good handful of the celery. If your produce guy is good to you, he'll leave the celery leaves more intact. Mine seem to, I don't know why, but they chop them all off. And quite frankly, celery leaves are some of the best flavor on the plant. So if you got them, use them. So give this a dry toss before we get the liquid into the party. And here go the eggs and spices. In with our stock, I'm going to do about that much to start. I told you this wasn't an exact science. And now the chicken stock. And while you could use a spatula or other implement, it's not called Mr. Spork's hands for nothing. It's going to give them a toss. I just want to moisten everything. I can always add a little bit more. Say these are almost going to break up on their own, but that is pretty much all you want to do there. This one seems a little bit more moist, but it will be fine. And now you want to walk away for about 3 minutes. You want to let that stock soak into the dry bread and the cornbread. Be back in just a couple seconds with some cleaner hands. You see, I put that brief resting time to good use. I took out my big hunk of butter and buttered my dishes all over, particularly up the sides, just as you would for a souffle, because you want it to slide up those sides as easy as possible. I think it's all going to fit into my one pan, but just in case, I buttered a second dish for overflow, if you will, as Chef's treat. I've actually made Thanksgiving dinners with just this size pan before, but I've made 8 of them and set one between every other person. It was kind of fun to do it that way. Do whatever works for you and whatever dishes you got available. The last thing to do, of course, is to check for seasoning, just like I used to do for Grandma. A little too late to add more sage at this point, but I do want to check the salt. I can't tell you how much because it's going to be different depending on your stocks and your breads and all sorts of other factors that may have snuck salt in when you weren't looking. So always do the check. Yeah, spot on. We're right there. So it's time to get it into my dishes. And as I suspected, it all fit into my one dish. Don't worry, the other buttered dish won't go to waste. I'll make a gratin or something in it. I'm just checking for moist but not soupy. If I needed to add just a little bit more stock, I would at this point. But otherwise, we are ready for the oven. Remember, it's been preheating at 425. I'm about to throw it in and knock it right down to 375. Those are Fahrenheit. That would be 220 Celsius down to 190 Celsius. In we go. I'm going to test it at about 25 minutes. It could take as long as an hour, depending on the shape and size of your dish. But realistically, you're probably in the 30 to 45 minute range. So let's get it in the oven. We'll see how it comes out in just a bit. While that's in the oven baking, let's talk about some additions you could make if you want to vary the theme after you've made it this way once or twice, just to know where you're starting from. Italian sausage is a hugely popular addition. Just take some sausage, get it out of the casing, fry off little tiny bits. Don't cook it all the way through because it'll finish baking in the oven, but that's a delicious addition. People put in duck confit, they put in chicken. Some people put in oysters, not my favorite. You could certainly add some root vegetables, rutabagas or carrots. That'll add some sweetness. You could even go grab some of the last apples off the tree if you want to put those in for just a little bit of sweetness. If you want to try something tart and more savory, go get yourself some fresh cranberries. We get these year-round up here pretty much. If you want something not so tart and sweet, get yourself some dried cranberries or dried raisins or dried apricots. Any of those dried fruits would work. You could certainly add in some weird squash. I probably wouldn't use this one. I'd go get an acorn or something. You can add some citrus zest. You could absolutely go get yourself some chestnuts roasted. If you've got fresh local roasted chestnuts, try that. They're delicious. I'm stuck with these in a pre-packaged version. You can also go and get 5 or 6 heads of garlic and roast them till they're sweet and mix that in. All delicious. Just play around with it. But the one thing I will tell you on any addition, the more you load into it, the denser it gets, the less likely it's going to be nice and light and fluffy and airy. So err to the side of caution. Use small amounts of any of these, and obviously test it before you have the whole family over for dinner. Okay, I'm going to try to dish this up and show you a little bit of the texture. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but believe me when I tell you that it's fluffy and fall apart delicious. Get in there and get some of the crusty bits. There's creaminess on the inside, that crusty top and around the edges, absolutely beautiful. And of course, plenty of sage. So that's my old family recipe for Southern cornbread and sage dressing. I do hope you get a chance to make some for yourself. If not for a big holiday meal, make a batch on a random Tuesday in April. It is delicious anytime you've got the stock and the bread. You're pretty much there. There's so little measuring. It's all kind of personal preference. After you've done it once or twice, you pretty much have it memorized. I always make too much of this stuff at a time. So what I like to do with the leftovers, when it cools completely, you can actually slice it kind of like polenta and fry it off in a little bit of brown butter. You're going to get the crispy outside and the creamy inside. It is absolutely delicious as a side dish next to a pork chop or a chicken quarter or anything else you got on your plate. You may never go back to these guys after you've had this a few times. As always, I really appreciate each and every one of you suffering through another one of my videos. All those subscriptions, all those likes and thumbs ups and tweet spaces and everything else, every single bit of it does help. If you have a few extra seconds and can watch the random ad that runs after this, that puts a few pennies in my pocket. And let me tell you, that is the engine driving this bus down the road. So the more you can do that, the more I appreciate you. As always, I'm Mr. Spork. These are Mr. Spork's hands. Now, I got to go find the cranberry sauce. It's around here somewhere. Cheers.